everyone. Welcome back, Expanding the Zone. I'm Shane Combs here with my brother Matt, and we're coming to you show 58. And Matt, it's been away a while, and now we've come back here ready to kind of do a little transition show as we jump into a basketball series here, starting in show 59. This being show 58, and we just kind of wanted to talk sharpening your leadership, or how do leaders stay sharp in terms of no, really all year round. Times you take away, times that you're in the grind, all of those particular things. I think we'll touch on a little bit all of it, but I think it's something that a lot of leaders fail to recognize and fail to do. But first of all, thank you, Dr. Chris Good, for all the support here on the YouTube channel. I know throughout the fall, been able to do a lot of football, volleyball talk, and now we come back here on our podcast series, and I'm excited to do some of the basketball stuff. But man, I know I'm excited to talk leadership anytime I get an opportunity, and that's kind of what we're doing here. So Matt, just to kind of kick us off a little bit, maybe a comment on your first thoughts when it comes to staying sharp, and maybe even throw in a little bit of your thoughts on where you're hoping to go here in the upcoming basketball season with this.
Yeah, Shane, I think you and I have talked a lot about what we want to do with this show over the winter, and we wanted to kind of wrap up this season with this kind of, how do you stay sharp as a leader? How do you keep improving and those types of things, and then hopefully, and I know you'll talk about this maybe toward the end of the show a little bit too, but hopefully then hop into some basketball stuff this winter with the show, and maybe go in a little bit of a new direction. So yeah, but we're excited to kind of to put this season finale show here to get started with it, and just really kind of bounce some ideas off each other on how leaders continue to get better.
As we often do on Expanding the Zone, we don't do a lot of the pre-show discussion. We'd like to try to have an agenda, then we try to go our individual ways, and then we just try to have conversation here to almost lead what we hope is dialogue that you're having with yourself and with colleagues and different things. I know we have business leaders that listen. Obviously, the majority of our office, or our audience, I should say, is outside of the office, like in terms of coaches, teachers, and so forth. But really, it's neat to get the feedback from a lot of different leaders. And so, Matt, the way I was going to do this is coming into play when we talk about staying sharp. I've come up with three things. You are going to kind of try to do the same. We're just going to try to throw them back and forth. Good chance we may duplicate some, we may overlap some, and that's okay. But I think it'll just start for a good discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and kick us off here. So I look down at my notes. For leaders to stay sharp, I think they have to be, I think the word I want to use is genuine over compliance in their professional development. So anytime you're in leadership, let's face it, we see it as principals. We always had it as teachers. We have it as coaches. There's going to be compliance. There's certain things you have to do, right? You have to check certain boxes, and you have to do it the best you can. But beyond that stuff, I think you have to have a genuine desire to want to get better. It's one thing to renew a teaching certificate. It's another thing to keep your coaching credentials updated, pay your memberships, all of those different things. That's not really what I'm talking about. I guess here, Matt, what I'm talking about is more being totally genuine and the desire to get better at your craft. If you don't love it enough to do that, I would probably challenge you to look for another way to go about it. You know what I mean? Not to be blunt, but it's just one of those things. If you don't love teaching, if you don't love coaching, if you don't love working in the grind with kids at all the way through this process, you may not be doing the right thing. I guess I just feel that passionate about it. So I have other thoughts about what that means, but I wanted to get your first response to the word genuine in terms of compliance aside, being genuine in your professional development.
Yeah, when I hear you talk, it kind of reminds me of the almost like action versus activity. I mean, it's not just, hey, I'll go do something, but I'm going to do something with a purpose. I'm going to really take action, not just, or how many times as a coach have you said to your players, at practice, hey, we're just going through the motions today, right? We're not, you're not really mentally into it, physically, like, invested in it. You're just sort of jumping through the hoops you have to do today because this is what we're doing. And I think that's kind of what you mean here. How many times, I mean, if you think about it, you're in a meeting, right? You have to go to a meeting. And sometimes it's easy to take the attitude of, get this meeting today. Um, but what I've found a lot of times as I've gotten further into my career, sometimes those meetings are a form of getting better as a leader, either by some of the discussion that takes place, right? Because you're in a room with maybe like-minded people. So maybe, one thing that jumps to my mind is our monthly leadership admin meetings at the school I work at. You're in a room full of people who are all in leadership. They're all excellent. I'm fortunate at school I'm at. They're excellent in what they do. And, I like picking their brain. You know what I'm saying? I like asking them questions occasionally. I like hearing what they have to say about how they've handled a situation. I think you learn that way. And so instead of just saying, "Oh, we got a meeting today," I try to look at it as, hey, this is an opportunity to get better today. It's an opportunity to learn. Um, and I think that your example could go into a lot of different places. I mean, how many times even when you go someplace, I mean, how many times have you been to a coach's clinic, right? And a lot of the coaches are just there to go out to eat and hang out with their friends and get a weekend away from home, right? And that's part of it. You do get a little bit of time to sort of get away and just have some fun with some people or whatever. But if you're going to go to a coach's clinic, there probably ought to be a little bit of note taking, little bit of learning, a little bit of, hey, I'm going to listen to these guys speak and I'm going to try to get better today. It's like how do you utilize your time, but no, I'm with you. I think that there's I think that people who, I like it. Somebody used the term hungry to learn, just hungry all the time to get better and learn, an appetite for learning, right? And to me, it's like what you're saying, take every opportunity. Don't just do it because you have to be there, but really use it as an opportunity to get better.
Yeah, I like that. I try to put some things down here in the notes on things I've tried to do over the years, and then I've even started to brainstorm some ways I'd like to expand on it. But I think it's really really important. I had an opportunity recently to talk to some young teachers, even some people coming up through college, and just talking a little bit about the importance of this very thing of constantly trying to get better. We're always going to have classes we have to take, and we always got to have this little renewal to do and all this thing, and that's important. Don't get me wrong. You focus in on those and you do learn a lot, but I'm talking about the real desire to have a passion for it. Maybe you read, maybe you watch, maybe you listen. I've had groups that have done book studies before. Um, maybe it's just something as simple as a podcast. Not to plug the show here, but like I know I have
Right.
2 or 3 podcasts I listen to just in the car all the time. And as I listen to the podcast, I'm doing what I hope people have found they can do with expanding the zone, and that's just kind of have these conversations with themselves along with us as we kind of just talk and give ideas aloud. Um, the journal writing. Like I've had groups before where we would just throw out a question to our coaching staff. We throw out a question of the week. Hey, just journal this, and then let's just throw ideas off. Hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I think those are some important things. I've talked about as I'm currently stepping away from basketball for a season here to just try to get a little healthier and kind of gear up for my being a principal and still being a baseball coach and stuff. I'd still like the opportunity to go visit some practices, go do some different things to stay sharp. There's certain things that I think I teach really well. I'd like to brainstorm those things with them, but then there's certain things I think, man, I don't know if I would teach that as well. Figure out who does that well and go do that. So all of these different things, just trying to always offer examples on here to do. But what's been your take on that, Matt? I know ads get a chance to get together monthly. I know principals get a chance to get together monthly. There's constant times where you can talk to those like-minded people. Don't you feel like it's a little bit of responsibility? It's almost arrogant, if we're being honest, if you disregard the opportunities to pick the brain of these other people and these like-minded people in order to try not to better yourself in some way, isn't it?
Well, it really is. I mean, I've always felt like, people that get to a certain point in their career and they no longer really want to improve and get better. It's either laziness or arrogance, and either one's not good, obviously. So because you get to a point where you say, I've kind of I've been successful. I'm just going to do it this way. It seems to work, and there's just no. And what really happens is, in some cases, you know, depending on a situation that a person's in, they may still appear to be pretty successful, but you have to ask the question, were they successful as they could have been? Did they underachieve a little bit because they didn't, take those steps to continually improve? I would even take it a step farther, Shayne. Like one of the things I had in my notes that kind of go with this, that kind of goes along with this, so I'll just mention it now, was not only do you, like we're talking about, where when you're in a meeting or you're somewhere where you have to be or you've signed up to be, and you pick the brains of those types of people, right? You mentioned seeking people and even going out of your way, like to attend a practice, right? You had mentioned that. And I think there's something to be said for that, where you really look for opportunities to talk to people you think you can learn from. And for me, it's like, even if um, occasionally I play golf with somebody who used to be a coach many years ago. All right. And not even in the same sport that I coach. But whenever I get the opportunity out on the golf course, I like to bring up coaching scenarios to him and situations to him and say, I remember one time I had a kid who did this, or I had a parent who said this, or I had and just pick his brain. How'd you handle that back when you coach? You ever have anything happen like that? And you're out there on hole number 8, you're playing golf, but you're also, in a way, getting professional development, right? You're talking coaching right then. So I think you have to look for those opportunities, to seek out those people in your field, right? Who you have a lot of respect for, whether that be another principal. I stood out in my driveway just the other day and talked to a principal at another school just because he stopped by my house to pick up something from me that he needed, and we shot the breeze for 20 minutes about how school year going, what's it, and we just had those conversations, you know, just really not wanting to pass up on an opportunity just to learn something. I think when you have a desire to learn, and to me, Shayne, that's something too that's not necessarily natural. I don't know that I always had that. I think as I got older,
I
I
agree.
probably developed that. It's like people, I don't want to come across as, well, look at us, we're so good, because most of what we're talking about, we've learned over the years through mistakes that we've made. You know what I mean? And we've grown through those mistakes, and one of those is probably not taking advantage of these opportunities maybe when I was younger. As I get older, I appreciate it more. I appreciate getting to talk to some experienced coaches a lot of times, or administrators, or just whoever I think's in my line of work that can help me get better.
Well, I'm glad you said it that way because that's the truth. I mean, all three of these things I have down this evening. Um, I know I continue to try to do better and better and better because in the first 5 to 10 years that I was in some of the positions I'm in now, I wasn't very good at them. As we get into show 59 and some of the early things we're going to talk about in basketball, I can promise you we're going to talk about things that I'm a heck of a lot better at now than I was 15 years ago, and I hope I can get better at them in the next 5 to 10 years. And
Right.
it's so yeah, I think that's well said. Now, um, I'll throw it back to you there. Did you have one you wanted to? I know you said that one kind of overlapped there. Did you have one on yours that you wanted to jump start a discussion with?
Well, for me, and I guess all this stuff, if we're going to be honest, sort of, ties together a little bit or it's intertwined. But like for me, I think in our line of work, obviously, we're busy. I mean, that's the one thing people say, people say to me, how's the job going? Because to them, it's still a relatively new job for me because it's only been a little, year and a half or so. And how's the job going? And I always tell them, hey, I enjoy it, but it's busy. I'm busy all the time. There's very few nights that I'm not doing something. There's very few moments within the day that it's not moving fast. And so one of the things that I have found is that if you're going to find time to sort of sharpen your saw, so to speak, right? You have to almost like multitask with it. For instance, when you're in your car driving, what are you doing? For me, I try to listen to a podcast. Now there's days, look, we all need to just decompress. There's days you hop in the car and I just crank up some music and just, kind of just go brain dead for 15 minutes, right? But then a lot of days though, I like to take that time where I'm driving and turn on a podcast. And like you said about podcast, I've got several different types. I have some that are just for fun, Cincinnati Reds podcast or college football podcast, but I have a lot. I have a lot of them that are learning things, whether it be a basketball coaching podcast, whether it be there's a podcast called Principal Matters, that's an administrative podcast. Uh, you know, I mean, we don't have to list specific ones necessarily, but I know there's several you like to listen to as well. And for me, that's a way of I've got to be in my car driving. I might as well use this as some time to learn. I listen to podcasts sometimes when I'm mowing the yard, or when I'm exercising. You're trying to physically get better, so at the same time, you're going to try to mentally get better, I guess. But for me, it's kind of like I guess we live in a day and age with technology, we have an advantage maybe over generations past where we can do this stuff, right? I mean, if you think about the stuff we have at our fingertips, Shayne, that our parents would have never had in our situation, of people will say, you talk about, I mentioned coaches clinics. Well, there's coaches clinics 24/7. It's called YouTube. I mean, you can find anything you want. You you can get better. I mean, it's like you could I can't remember the last time I did a project around the house. I didn't get on YouTube first. Like, hey, how do I fix this drain? How do I right? I mean, it's like it's right there at your fingertips. Podcast, and it used to be you had to find time to sit down and read. Right? You don't even have to do that now. Reading's great, but you don't have to do it. There's other ways to do it. So I guess my point would be, Shayne, as busy as leaders tend to be, don't you have to find time to sort of multitask a little bit and just maybe manage your time in a way where you squeeze that stuff in?
I love the idea of time management. I think, look, we all are busy, and there are some days where you just simply have things you're responsible for and you have to do. But I love what you're saying there. Obviously I'm always the first to talk about my faith, for example. It's one of those things where every morning I make sure I have time to do my devotion and my
Right,
different things before I walk out of the house. And if I don't, if I sit there and hit the alarm two more times, I'm making a choice not to do that day. You see what I'm saying?
right,
So it's one of those things where it's a priority. We we do prayer to pole out at Paint Valley the first Monday of every month at 7 a.m. Well,
right,
I get to school like at 7:10 to 7:12 every day anyway. For me not to go there, I'm making a choice. You see what I'm saying? Like if it's a
right,
priority to go do it. I love what you say about the multitask. You said earlier, you can go play golf and you can kind of throw in a little professional development within there. You got to mow your yard anyway. You can throw it in there. You got to drive your car to work. You got to drive home. Whatever it may be. I love what you're talking about. Throwing it into a part of your day and finding it. And then also, I can remember I can remember saying that maybe this is a small school type of concept here around the Ross County area, but like I've always said that the truly great players not only make themselves great, that they're constantly trying to make everybody around them better. You know what I mean? So like think about the kids you've coached over the years. it's not just the kid who comes to every open gym. It's the kid that brings 4 or 5 kids with him, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
if it's, hey, I'm not just in the weight room. Hey, Matt, let's go get in the weight room together. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
one of those things. Hey, I'm gonna watch some film after school before practice. Why don't we grab some McDonald's, sit down, and watch it together, or whatever. And so
Right.
it's it's one of those things where are you bringing? So that's what I always love doing, those journal things. I've done those journal things by myself before, but I tell you, it's been far more satisfying when I've been able to get a group of, say, like 3 or 4 coaches and email a question and say, I'm going to be journaling this over the next week. I'd love for you to do it a little bit, and then follow up with them. Hey, here
Mm-hmm.
are some of my thoughts. I was wondering what some of your thoughts. Before you know it, you're trying to include them, but really what you're doing is you're kind of like putting a little pressure on them to, like, hey, why don't you do this with me? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like I know you've had some examples of that where you have gone to coaching clinics. Well, rarely did you go by yourself, right? You
Right.
went with your staff, or those. So talk about that a little bit in terms of when you're in a position of leadership, bringing people along for the ride. I guess, does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it does. I mean, if you think about, we talk about different types of leadership, and one of the things I've always sort of, I don't know, and some people may disagree with this. I've always kind of felt like, leader people who are leaders by examples, quote unquote, right? Leaders by example, or I think people mean that well, and to me though, I almost look at it as it's a little bit on the selfish side if you're only a leader by example. Don't get me wrong, I think you should set an example, right? But if that's all you do, in a way, it's kind of selfish. I mean, because you basically just, okay, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to do it right, and and then, but I don't really care about what anybody else does, right? I'm going to show up to practice early. I'm going to get some extra shots up. I'm going to stay a little late, get some extra shots up. I'm going to make sure I'm focused and ready to go and prepared. But then, but of the rest of these jokers out here, if they want to do what they got to do, I'm not going to get. Well, that's not leadership, really. That's just basically handling your own business. But like you say, leadership is what, taking people with you, right? You got to lead
Mhm.
somebody, and then it turns into more, servant leadership, where you're actually doing for others and you're taking them along with you. And so I think that's I think that's a crucial part of leadership. And then the other part of that, Shayne, is that I can remember, Donnie Neff used to tell me all the time, the legendary coach from Union back in the day, if you can teach it, then you definitely can do it. You know what I mean? If you can teach it, you've mastered. So like, so and he's right, because think about when you've had to stand up in front of a group of people and teach something, you truly have had to master the content, and through teaching it, Shayne, you get better at it, right? You remember it
No
more.
question.
And so I think when you take people with you in those situations, indirectly, you're developing yourself professionally too.
Well, and to piggyback on that, I can think, talking about getting better and having proof of getting better, and to admit that I just wasn't very good at this. Even though I loved what I was doing, I wasn't as good at it when I was younger. I used to have what I thought was a great lesson, and I would teach it, and it would be like 32 minutes. Well, the period's 50 minutes. Now I'm staring at 20 middle school kids for 18 more minutes. Where
Right.
where now you can sit up and talk to people as long as you need to fill the time, or teach bell to bell, as we call it, right? Same way in practice. I'm sure you went through this as a young coach. I
Mhm.
used to be able to run a drill, and okay, I ran a 6 minute drill. Now what? Where now, as an assistant, I'll be at practice and the head coach will be like, no, 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 we have to go on. You know what I mean? Like, because I can sit
Right.
there and coach it as long as you
Right.
want me to. So I think you're right in terms of that growth. Let me throw a second one at you here on
Yeah,
my
definitely.
list. Um, let's go with this one. I think this one's really, really good. I want to hear your thoughts on this, because you and I both believe in this, but we probably go about it a little bit differently. In all honesty, know your people. So as people, as you're leading the group, I think sometimes the business leader, or the boss, so to speak, which I hate that word, but the boss, or who's ever in charge, they sometimes feel like there's a line you can't cross, or that, and there's a truth to that. Don't get me wrong, okay? But at the same time, it's people leading people, and if you don't know them as people, I just don't know how well you can lead them in the most complete way. So what I mean by that is knowing a little bit about their family, knowing their personality. How are they going to react to this? When something happens, I can almost in my mind go down the middle school hallway and I can tell you how every single adult on the floor is going to react to that news that was just released. Does that make
Mhm.
sense? Like,
Mhm.
same way with kids. Like something happens, oh, wait a minute, that kid's not going to react to that very well. I better make sure he's okay, or I better make sure someone's in charge of that particular situation. And I think that's true with players. I think it's true with assistant coaches. I think if you're a business leader, knowing how your employees feel about certain things, but having the opportunity, sometimes it's okay in leadership just to step away from the actual job and just say, you know, hey, I know so and so is having surgery every day. Everything go okay with that? I just want to let you know I was thinking about you. You know, what I mean, just like having an idea of what's going on in their life. And again, maybe some of these things are small school setting where we're such a family knit, close knit group. But I think there's a place for that in all leadership to some extent. Just your thoughts on that in terms of leaders knowing their people as people.
It's crucial. I mean, we talk all the time about, and I can't imagine the number of times in these 50 some odd episodes we've done where we've mentioned relationships, right? In leadership, forming relationships with those who you lead, and the importance of the relationship in leadership. And I think that's what you're talking about here. And we talked earlier about finding all those little moments to get better, right? Like if you're in a meeting or you're in your car listening to a podcast, or you take advantage of every learning opportunity. Well, in a way, when you approach somebody in the hallway, like you're saying, and you talk to them about them, right, and get to know them better, it's genuine. You want to get to know your people better. Don't get me wrong. It's not like a strategy. I mean, at least it's not. I know it's not for you. It's not for me. I mean, if I'm standing in the hallway, talking to a teacher, kind of laughing with them, and it's genuine. I don't. I'm not going to be out there if I don't want to be out there. Okay, but at the same time, it's effective because you're getting closer to that person. You're becoming, what I mean, you're developing a relationship with that person, so that when the time comes where you have a something happen at school where it's a professional situation, or you're dealing with a student together, right, or whatever, you've developed a little bit of a relationship with them. I think if you're not the type of leader that knows what makes your people tick, then it's especially difficult to lead in difficult situations, if that makes sense. So it's easy to lead somebody when everything's hunky dory, but when things are difficult, that's when the strength of your relationship really come into play. And the relationship's not going to be strong if you never ever take the opportunity to do something other than talk shop. If every conversation you have with your basketball player is basketball, or every conversation you have with a teacher at your school is just education or just school, then then that's a transactional relationship, right? It's not a transformational one. That's not one where both sides are really getting better from it. And so no, I think that's one I did not have down, and that's I'm glad you did, because I really didn't think of it, but it's spot on. Just that constantly building the relationships.
Yeah, the only thing I would throw onto that is just some examples. Again, trying to give examples. A lot of times throughout the teaching profession, I know on our middle school floor alone, we have over half of our staff. Think about that. Over half of our staff coaches our kids in something. I mean, throughout
Mhm.
the year. Well, we know the wear and tear that can take on a person physically and mentally when all of a sudden your days become 12, 13, 14-hour days during that particular season. Well, that's going to impact that's just gonna impact you as a human coming into the 7:35 TBT meeting every week. You know what I mean? It just
Mhm.
is. Just having some of those awareness things, having someone has that sick parent that they're caring for, they're working all day and then caring for that parent all night and then getting right back up and doing it again the next day. You know, having I guess awareness is the word. It doesn't mean we still don't have to do our jobs. It just means that we're people that are doing the jobs, and it's okay to still be a human being and
Mhm.
and show that respect and that caring factor in that relationship. So again, I think that's a good discussion. Now, I did have one more, Matt. Did you have another
No,
one there
no,
you want to
go
throw in
go
there?
ahead, Shayne. Bounce it off of us.
Okay. Well, my third and final one was it's one thing to, how do I want to say it, get away from it. It's another thing to disregard it. So as
Right.
a leader, we always somewhere in there you're going to have an off season, if you will, as coaches, or you're going to have vacation time as a business person, or whatever it may be. I think it's one thing to quote unquote get away, but it's another thing just to disregard to the point. If you're the coach who, you know, the off season is completely off hands,
Right.
that's probably not going to work real hard for you. You know, we joke in the leader and me on the sharp and the saw. That doesn't mean to take, 5 days off every 9 weeks. You know what I mean? That
Mhm.
that there's a different meaning to that. So I guess what I'm talking about is making sure that you find that balance. Maybe this goes back a little bit to your time management, which I think is really good. But even where this one's different is I think we're talking about a time that is designed to get away
Mhm.
and allowing yourself to get away from it, but again, not disregarding. The best example I can come up with, and you have all the years of a basketball coach, maybe to comment on this, is, the dead period.
Mhm.
The dead period is a time for you to quote unquote get away, but let's face it, that August dead period, for example, you've got a
Mhm.
lot going on in terms of organization, right? So it's a quieter time, but you're getting ready for, everything to take off as September rolls around. um, the summer for a teacher, by all means, you want to make sure you have time with the family, you want to, recharge the battery. But I would challenge, as I said back on my number one about genuine professional development, I would challenge any teacher not to just disregard education for 3 months.
Right.
So I guess that's what I'm talking about is I think leaders have to define what this means for them in terms of whatever your vacation time is, whatever your time is away from wherever your leadership role is. It's one thing to get away from it for a minute. It's another thing just to disregard it. Just your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, I almost thought you were going there a few minutes or just a couple minutes back when you were talking about you know, people having personal lives and things on their minds and things like that. I thought you were kind of heading in this direction. I'm glad you did because I was going to mention it, of just really recharging your batteries a little bit, right? But not totally, like you say, there's a difference in recharging your batteries and just absolutely shutting it down and not doing anything for months on end, because that's not a way to get better, obviously. I almost think, Shayne, sometimes, like, and we remember we had kind of a show one time where we talked about the off season or whatever, but it's like I think sometimes it's even like when you get away and you relax, it's almost nice to think about your craft in other ways. So, like, for instance, in coaching, you know, if you are in the off season and let's say you're even, like, maybe you're on vacation, right? You're out of town with your family or whatever, and you're sitting around late at night, obviously that you're not in the gym, you're not necessarily breaking down film, right? You're on vacation or whatever, but even then, sometimes you can think about things like, you know, man, wonder what are some of the maybe what's maybe a new approach we can take this year with this drill and practice, or just really sort of kind of just relaxing and thinking about things in sort of a non-urgent way, right? Where you're sort of brainstorming. Um, I don't know if I'm making sense with that, but you're just kind of like very leisurely sort of
Okay,
thinking
to have
about.
your mind on it without just being
Yeah,
obsessed with it.
yeah, you're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
really, yeah, right. You're just kind of thinking about some things. What we could do this, we could do that. Like I said, almost brainstorming within your own self, and kind of still, so your mind's still on it, but like you said, you're not eating up with it at that point. Like, let's face it, as a coach, if you're right in the middle of, January, you're sort of eating up with it. But if you're in the summertime and you're just thinking about some things, it's not, it's not that same level of stress that goes with it, right? It's just, you're just kind of using that opportunity to come up with some ideas, really. So you're never totally away from it, but you're sort of separated enough to where you're getting some stress-free time. Because I think you're right. I think if you're not careful, you can burn yourself out a little bit. We all need a little bit of time away from time to time just to sort of recharge. Like today, we're recording this on a day where we weren't in school. And I took the opportunity to go into my office for about an hour and a half. And it wasn't because I felt like I had to or needed to. It was honestly somewhat relaxing for me because typically when I'm in that office, it's like, you know, Main Street, man, people coming through. It's hey, you got a minute? That's the famous line every principal will tell you about, right? Hey, you got a minute? But there's a lot going on, right? In a typical school day at a high school, especially, or even when I'm into middle school, there's a lot going on. Today, I was the only one in there. I'm just sitting in there. It's perfectly quiet. I was able to just there's like three things I wanted to get done today. And I just knocked them out. Took me about an hour and a half. Went down to the gym, got on the treadmill. It was just relaxing, kind of. But yet, I was still doing something today to be productive, but it wasn't the same level of stress as your normal day is. So, yeah, I like the way you said that. Kind of getting away, recharging your batteries, but yet not just totally abandoning it.
It leads into the as I was taking notes during the show here, it leads into my final thought. I'll go ahead and throw this out there, and by all means, if you have more to add, please do. But I want to go ahead and make this while it's so relevant to the show. So when I think back of professional development, I think back to knowing people, I think back to time management, I think back to getting away but not disregarding the word uh, quality is so important. It's not about the quantity because I want to be clear. Their burnout is real. You know what I mean? Like like I'm the first to admit that here in a recent coaching job I had, there was different motivating factors and different things where I almost became obsessed with coaching. Like tonight, you're sitting here talking about tonight. I had some different things going on, and my wife Bethany and I are going to take off to the state volleyball tomorrow, and we enjoy doing that stuff. But I was watching Ohio State, Texas A&M tonight, Duke, Arizona, and there's times when I've been coaching, Matt, like I almost wouldn't allow myself to do that in season because I'd be sitting here watching Ohio State, Texas A&M, and I'd be like, man, I should probably turn on the film of that scrimmage the other day and just see if I'm prepared for practice tomorrow.
Right.
Did I miss something? Did I do this?
Mhm.
Or if we're in season, especially, scouting, man, maybe I should turn on that opponent film one more time. And that's not always healthy. You know what I'm saying? So like
Right.
having, you mentioned it in your notes, the time management, having the quality time set aside. Just like I mentioned with my devotion time in the morning. That's only about a 10-15 minute activity, but that's something very important to me. Like it having that time management and having that quality time set aside, just like you said today, when you had the ability to go in for about an hour and a half, it was in a very relaxing setting, but it was a real important thing that you're able to get done. And whatever it is you're doing, I guarantee will make your job easier in the upcoming week because you're able to do those particular things and do them as well as I'm sure you're able to do them today in this setting. So just something for people to think about. I never want them to think that you're a terrible leader if you're just not 24/7, 24/7. That's not what we're
Right.
saying. Um, I am saying that if you don't love what you do, you may be doing the wrong thing.
Right.
But at the same time, I do want everybody to understand that there has to be a balance, there has to be time management, and there does have to be a sense of I'm going to do a real quality job and not get so obsessed with the quantity of it because again, I think that can be unhealthy. And once you become an unhealthy version of yourself, you become a poor leadership version of yourself. So I'll kind of give you the final thought there, Matt, and we'll close it out here for show 58.
Yeah, I mean, to me that's well said. It doesn't have to be fourth and goal with 8 seconds on the clock every second of every day of your life, right? But I do like what you said about if you don't at all enjoy what you do, because here's the thing: if you enjoy what you do, And look, nobody enjoys what they do every single second, every single day. There's times where, every job has its moments, right? But like, if you enjoy what you do as a whole, then you're going to want to do some of the things we talked about tonight, right? If you enjoy being a school administrator, then you're going to want to listen to an occasional podcast or read an occasional book or pick up an occasional article, talk to another school administrator. You're going to want to do those things from time to time. Otherwise, you really don't have a passion for it, right? And most people at that point in their career, they wouldn't have lasted long enough to get into those positions if they didn't have a passion for it. A lot of times, your people that you see are superintendents or principals, or those people are far enough into their careers in a lot of situations where they obviously have a passion for it, or they would have went on to do something else by now. Or as a coach that's been in it a long time or whatever, same thing. There's days you need to get away from it. We talked about that, but at the same time, if you coach, you love to coach, so you're always going to want to sort of think about it a little bit or do a little something on it, or you never really get completely away from it because it's a passion. It's what you enjoy doing. Um, so no, it's been good talking. I mean, you say it all the time, Shayne. This show in itself is professional development, right? How many times have you said that at the end of a show? So it's these opportunities like this where we just talk about it, where we all grow and get better.
Well, a lot of fun. Hope people can have the dialogue with themselves and others, is just the way Matt and I do here on Expanding the Zone. Thank you so much to Dr. Chris Good, as I always say, to the support on the YouTube channel. If you're getting us on the podcast, check us out over on the YouTube side. And again, if you're watching us here and you're wanting us in the car or on the mower, as Matt says there, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts throughout. So Matt's been a lot of fun. This is a wrap on 58. Remember, check out show 59 coming out soon as we get our basketball series going, and I look forward to it. So on that note, I'm Shayne Combs. He's Matt Combs, Expanding the Zone. Thanks, everyone.